Good morning, Sean. How are you?
I'm fine, and thank you for joining us on the programme. You are calling for an end to the delay in the development of the second runway at Dublin Airport, and you believe that you're arguing in a news release the Attorney General has a particular role to play in this. It's fairly complicated to do with statutory instruments and the like, but explain to us in simple language, if you can, what's at issue here.
Well, it's pretty simple, Sean. One of the planning requirements for to allow the second runway at Dublin Airport to proceed is to, pretty stringent noise monitoring, so that independent third party is appointed to monitor noise and the continuing decline in noise at Dublin Airport. This requires a statutory instrument to allow. It's the Irish Aviation Authority who are the experts in this area and who are the people who monitor. They would be the equivalent who monitor noise at most airports across Europe. But it requires a statutory instrument, and for some inexplicable reason, this legislation has been stuck in the Office of the Attorney General now for almost 12 months. There's no explanation for it. They've kicked it back twice, I think, fiddling around with drafting and commas and full stops and God knows what else. And it's just this kind of unacceptable bureaucratic dither and delay that seems to characterise any bit of necessary infrastructure here in Ireland. And the reason it's so critical is, we're coming up on Brexit in 18 months' time. If we need to be kicking on with the second runway. We can't grow at Dublin because at the moment the morning and the evening peaks are full, so we can't base any more aircraft. And we're being held up by a couple of bureaucrats in the Attorney General's office who can't get this statutory instrument issued. It should have been issued over 12 months ago. We have a new Attorney General, we have at least a new Taoiseach, and we're calling now, if there's going to be some new politics, let's have some action, let's get the statutory instrument issued.
Yes, as always, things are very simple in your world, but there is a difficulty, though, isn't there, with the planning permission, the terms and conditions imposed on the Dublin Airport Authority. There's a restriction on the number of flights, for instance, between 11 p.m. and 7 a.m. to 65, and they have to challenge that, and they can hardly go ahead and spend 320 million until they know exactly how many planes they can have landing and taking off.
Well, firstly, Sean, they shouldn't be spending 320 million. It's 240 million is what they should be spending, but that's a separate issue. Yeah, there's a couple of elements to this, but the critical thing first is the statutory instrument. And, that's at least within the control of this government and with the Attorney General's office. And it is unacceptable that it takes 12 months to issue a statutory instrument. It doesn't even require a vote of the Dáil. There are other planning restrictions, such as some mindlessly stupid thing that it limits the number of flights between the hours of 6 and 7 a.m. Frankly, that will get resolved. I think that's not going to be the impediment to the runway starting. But the fact that the second runway at Dublin has now been delayed for almost 12 months.
How do you know, by the way, that the delay is in the Attorney General's office and not in the office of the Minister, Shane Ross?
Because to be fair to the Transport Department, they have, we keep in close contact with them, and we're aware that it has been delayed in this Attorney General's office now for over 12 months, and that comes from not just the Department of Transport, from a number of other sources within the government bureaucracy as well.
And again, have you had explanations as to what exactly the delay is and what the reasons for it are?
No, and I think that's why in frustration, we've gone public on the issue. We want an explanation why it's been sitting there in the Attorney General's office for 12 months and how long more we're going to have to wait before somebody dots an I and crosses a T and gets it done. And this is pretty simple, Sean. Like, life usually is simple. If you want to grow and we want to get this economy ready for Brexit, there are significant opportunities for Ireland coming out of Brexit, but not if we can't add any flights at Dublin Airport because we don't have a second runway. And at the moment, the second runway is being held up by some bureaucrat in the Attorney General's office.
And there's another element to it as well, I suppose, that there are residents affected by the airport and the noise level. Now, are you satisfied enough that I think it's 38 of them in all, they're going to be offered, is it 30% above the market value for their homes to move out because they just don't want to stay and live there under those circumstances?
Well, I don't have that much sympathy given how quiet the aircraft, how much noise has reduced at Dublin Airport in recent years. But to be fair to Dublin Airport, they've reached a deal, I think, with those residents. There's a small number of them, and they're going to be paid 30% over market rate for their houses. Fine. If that's at least that progress has been made. But none of this can happen until there is third-party independent noise monitoring going on, which, to be fair, is in the interest of the residents. We'll have a third party there monitoring the noise performance following, as the airlines like Ryanair continue to invest in new aircraft that are significantly quieter. I mean, we take delivery of a new aircraft in 2019 that will reduce our noise by about another 30%. At least there will be third-party monitoring. But this can't happen, and the second runway can't happen until this statutory instrument is issued.
We'll try and get a little more information as to what the reasons for the delay might be. But in the meantime, how many more aircraft and how many more jobs, how much more business, how many more flights and routes would you propose to have based in Dublin if you can get this second runway?
Certainly, we think, at the moment, Dublin Airport is kind of capped out at around 30 million passengers a year. I think it's reasonable to expect that Dublin could grow to 35 or 40 million passengers, mainly on short haul, once the second runway is in place. That number could be higher or lower depending on the outcome of Brexit in 18 months' time. But it can't happen until there's a second runway. I mean, at the moment, Dublin Airport is stuffed to the gills. And the blockage is not, Terminal 1 is reasonably empty but we can't get more aircraft onto the runway because it's full in the morning. It's also delaying a lot of flights, like the amount of taxiing delays and pushback delays we're having now, we and the other airlines are having. And we're all victims of the fact that the one runway is still full.
And will the problem be solved by having a second runway? I mean, is there sufficient space in the two terminals that are there?
Yeah, there's not much space in Terminal 2 because it was badly designed, but in Terminal 1, there's loads of space because I think, the passenger behaviour is changing. Fewer and fewer people are checking in bags. More and more people are now arriving at the airport, flying with Ryanair, going straight through security, and that reduces the pressure on a terminal building. The restriction at the moment is on additional stands to park aircraft and on runway capacity during the peak times, morning and evening.
So you still haven't told me, though, how much extra capacity you think you can put in there if you get the second runway?
I've told you, I think the traffic could grow from 30 million passengers now to 35 or 40 million. We would deliver most, if not all, of that growth.
With how many extra planes and how many extra jobs?
Yeah, well, the extra planes, presently we have 30 aircraft based here. We would see that rising to at least 40 aircraft based here, going up by about a third. But there'd be more planes coming into Dublin from aircraft that are based elsewhere as well. Look, in the next 8 years, we're going to grow in Ryanair we carry 120 million passengers last year. We'll grow that to 200 million passengers a year. We're only talking about allocating 5 or 10 million of that growth to Dublin. But it would lead to probably about another 10 million passengers at Dublin. That's about another 100,000 jobs here in Ireland.
Right.
And that's being held up by somebody who can't dot an I or type in a comma.
Well, I'm sure the Attorney General
and
the people in his office would say, the good people there, that there's more to it than that, dotting I's and crossing T's. But look,
bureaucrats always tell us, Sean, it's very complicated, but that's what they're paid to do, and it shouldn't take 12 months to issue a statutory instrument. And
now, the other thing that seems to be hellishly complicated, and I suspect even you would agree with this, is the Brexit negotiations. Now, you warned in fairly stark terms that Britain, if it ends up with a hard Brexit and doesn't get its act together, could find itself with no flights going in and out of Europe. And again, that seems a vast simplification of the situation. How could it come about?
It's actually not. The difficulty is Britain is heading for a hard Brexit. There's no way, I think, and the problem is the time frame. It's a guillotine. It happens in March 19. It's up to the British to negotiate some kind of a soft Brexit within this 12-month period, or they're going to have a hard Brexit. And the problem with the British position is they've said they're going to leave open skies because they don't want to accept European Court of Justice jurisdiction, which is fine, that's their right. But if they do that, there is no legal basis for aircraft taking off between the UK and Europe if it leaves open skies, unless Britain negotiates a bilateral with the other EU 27. And the other EU 27 are not particularly minded to help the British negotiate a bilateral. So I think people misunderstand. It's that the lethargy of the British means it is almost now inevitable that there will be no flights between the UK and Europe. We think for a couple of weeks, couple of months after April 2019.
Do you really believe that? But they won't. These great bureaucrats can't come up with a solution. The one thing that Europe is brilliant at is muddling through.
You have no idea how much the major airlines of France and Germany are licking their lips at the thought of stranding the British Airlines, EasyJet, IAG, causing Ryanair significant kind of disruption for a period of time in the summer of 2019.
But why wouldn't the European 27 who remain, why wouldn't they want to cut a deal with the British?
because it's not in their interest to do so. The 27, the political, as you know, the political imperative here is to make sure that Britain suffers leaving the European Union. Otherwise, the other 27, or some or others of the other 27, will want to leave as well. Britain is going to suffer. It's going to be made to seem to suffer. Tells you all you need to know about the European Union. And the British are muddling through, unprepared, with this guillotine. I mean, if there wasn't a guillotine that didn't come down on the 29th of March in 2019, then I'd be more optimistic. The problem is it is a guillotine. And unless the British blink, which may well be the only way they'll get it, avoiding this outcome, there will be a disruption to flights. And this sort of, we'll muddle through and, the Europeans will do a deal, is simply blind optimism on the part of the British.
It's not the European, it's not the French airlines or airlines elsewhere. It's the French government, it's the Irish government, the governments in the other EU member states that have to make a decision on this, not and the European Commission, of course.
You underestimate, Sean, the extent to which the French government is influenced by French airlines, and the German government is influenced by German airlines. But, they will, large measure, ignore the sectoral interests, but what they won't do is they will not facilitate an easy Brexit for the British. They want to see the British suffer, and they want to demonstrate to the others that your best interests are served by being within the European Union, not being on the outside of it.
I have to ask you about something that's of concern to our listeners, and they've been texting 51551 and tweeting as well. Ask him. He says it's easy. This caller Eoghan says it's easy for Michael O'Leary to criticise everybody else. Ask him about Ryanair's rip-off seating policy. It's been exercising the minds and the voices of Lifeline callers, as you probably know, in recent days.
To be fair, I'm never sure what exercises the mind of Lifeline callers. There's been some controversy about our seating policy, which is, as usual, unfortunately, somewhat misunderstood. We have a free seating policy. If you don't want to pay a €2 for a fare of €2, and you choose a random seat, you get it free of charge. If you want to sit beside somebody, you buy a reserved seat. You can do that from €2. And frankly, if you're not happy to pay the €2 to sit beside somebody else, stop complaining. Our airfares this year are going to fall by €4 for the 130 million passengers we carry. And if you have chosen a random seat, you're getting a random seat. So stop whinging. But if you want to sit beside somebody else, pay the €2 like more than 50% or 65 million of our customers now do, and sit wherever you like.
And what about the fact that this, and again, there seems to be some ambiguity. Is this a change in policy? Isn't this a change in policy by Ryanair? I mean, it was possible to sit beside your beloved or your children in the past.
It was possible to fly for £300 to London with Aer Lingus in the past.
No, that's okay. That's a fine argument. You've been making it for 20 years, in fairness. But this is a much more recent thing.
Yeah, look, there's some view out there that we changed our policy. We haven't changed our policy. The policy has been, if you want a free of charge random seat, you'll get it. And if you want to select your seat, you pay from €2 to get your seat.
You make it sound like a pittance, €2. But I mean, it's from €2. The €2 applies, is it not, to children under 12?
No. Children under 12 get the reserve seat for free. The reserve seat starts from €2. At the moment, there are 60 seats on every or 40 seats on every aircraft that are priced at €2. There's another 60 seats that are priced at €4. And our fares this year have come down by €4. And so the whinging minority out there who believe somehow they should have the inalienable right to sit where they like free of charge, sorry, you can't, because more than half of our passengers want to pay a very small fee to select their own seat.
Now is probably a rather generous and generous to your self-interpretation. They don't have any choice. I mean, you take a family with two young kids. They need to sit together.
The young kids, we require any adult travelling with young kids, the adult must buy. We require the adult to buy a reserved seat. I think it's €2 or from €4, and the kids get the reserved seats beside the adult free of charge. If there's 3 kids in the group, you'll pay an average of €1 for the seats. We will not allow children under 12 to fly without their sitting beside their parents, and we give it to them free of charge to do so. But just to come back to the point, have we changed the policy? No. But the algorithms which allocate are changing on a daily basis and will continue to change because they're driven by demand. We now have more than 50% of our customers paying for a reserve seat. They overwhelmingly select the window window and the aisle seats, which means, yes, if you want a random seat, it's far more likely to be in the centre aisle, but it won't always be.
Okay, let's just hear an extract from Liveline.
And it is entirely free of charge, your choice.
Let's just hear an extract from Liveline, brief one.
If you want to sit together, you can purchase a seat from as little as €2. It can go up to €11, and they're for the overwing exits. Where
it's up to 20. Let's have the facts right.
It depends on the length of the flight as well. For some of the longer flights, it goes up to 16. Yeah.
You should go into politics. You're really good. It goes up to 20. If you want a reserve window seat, they can go up to 20.
You can choose to take an allocated seat, or you can choose to take a randomly allocated seat free of charge. It's down to customer choice.
That's your head of communications, Robin Kiley, battling bravely on your behalf, Michael O'Leary, and somebody who's
communicated the accurate position. I mean, I don't know what the other fellow is whining about.
Well, hold on. He says it can cost up to 20. You're talking about €2.
If you want to sit in the front row of the seats, which personally I never do myself, but if you want to sit in the front row seats, it will cost you, I think, €14. By the way, they are the most popular reserve seats. But
here's a point now made by one of our callers.
Each passenger, when you're making a booking, you at the time of making that booking can select, you can pick the reserve seat, and you can pick a €2 reserve seat. It's your choice.
Yeah, but and I know that you this has been written about you for many years. You make absolutely no compromises on safety. It's paramount, and Ryanair's track record is there. We all know about it, and it's an excellent one. But we've had a caller suggesting, I think, on Liveline, that all planes should be evacuated with 90 seconds. That's the best international practice. But if your wife and kids are down the back of the plane, you're going to search for them before leaving the aircraft. Now, you're denying that that's the case.
Absolutely untrue. In an emergency evacuation, you follow the guidelines of our cabin crew, and you will not be searching for your family. You're getting off the plane. You'll find your family down on the tarmac after there's been an emergency evacuation. The idea that we're going to have some emergency evacuation delayed while somebody is looking for their family members. By the way, it's no different in any other airline. If you show up in another airline late or you check in last on board the aircraft, your family will be split up as well.
But that's if you're last. But now another caller coming on, Ian, says, I've great time for Michael O'Leary, as a lot of people do, but he's now talking nonsense. I just booked 2 flights to Madrid and paid an extra €40 for the pleasure of sitting beside my wife.
Yeah, and he can pay €4 for the pleasure of sitting beside his wife. He chooses where the seats are. If he's just made the booking, he can select exactly which seats he wants, and if he wants the €2 seats, which are towards the back of the aircraft, he can have them. If he wants the €4 seats, which are towards in front of the overwing exits, he can have them. And if he wants the €15 seats, which are the overwing exits and the front row seats, he can have them. And if he doesn't want to pay for the seats, he can have it entirely free of charge, but he won't be able to pick where he sits.
This, again, they're really coming at you now, but that wouldn't never bother you. It's causing major problems on flights. It cost me, says another listener, €60 extra for our family to sit together.
But I don't see any difficulty. I don't know how many people are in the family. But the family are saving more than €60 by flying with Ryanair.
And again,
we lower our fares this year by more than 8%. We're lowering the fares this year.
We know that, and it was a marketing thing. You know, your feedback told you, look, you need to be kinder and gentler and nicer. What do you say to the person who said,
like a dream.
I sat beside a girl of 13 last week. She cried all the way.
Rubbish. Didn't happen. Like this kind of nonsense.
What do you mean it didn't happen? That's
rubbish.
Direct experience from one of our callers.
Oh, so therefore it must be true. Look, you think 30 teenage girls are crying because they're separated from somebody else. It has never yet happened on board a Ryanair flight.
Now, you have made such a sweeping statement there. You know that cannot be true. I mean, they might cry for all sorts of reasons. You saying a 13-year-old child has never cried on a Ryanair flight, and you give me statistics about the millions.
They are so thrilled to be on Ryanair flights at the lowest fares in Europe, going on holidays, going to visit friends and relatives, having a wonderful experience. Teenagers crying because they're separated from the adult, which would be, 4 seats ahead or 4 seats behind. And by the way, the responsibility for that is not ours.
And you're saying nothing has changed.
It's the adult who booked with them who decided we'll have random seats because we don't care where we sit.
Or maybe they're on a tight family budget at a time of stringency.
If you're on a tight family budget, Sean, you can buy a reserve seat for €2 for you and your 13-year-old to sit together.
I'll give the last word.
A total of €4. Go on, give the last word to some other passenger inventing more nonsense.
Well, it might be nonsense. He says, oh, what a breath of fresh air Michael O'Leary is. A straight talking man. God bless him. Jim in County Wexford. Are you melting?
That's probably another. It's probably some relative of mine thinking I need help. God bless them.
Just one last thing, because it's the topic of the day. The government is meeting in Celbridge today. They're producing a big policy on climate change. Do you expect aviation to feature in a sensible way?
If they do, I think what the government in Celbridge should do should be asking the Attorney General's office to issue the statutory instrument. Let's get on with the second runway. Allow Ryanair to or bring in new aircraft to Dublin that will reduce fuel consumption by 16% per seat, will lower our noise footprint by another 30%, and Ireland can see its
why am I thinking Dun
grow.
Stores better value beats them all? I mean, you really are sticking to the message, aren't you, today?
Because the message is true. The truth is there. We are investing huge sums of money, Sean, buying brilliant new aircraft that lower the fuel consumption and have a much quieter noise footprint. But we can't allocate any of these to Ireland unless we get the second runway started, and that's being held up by the Department of Commas and T's, dotting I's and crossing T's in the Attorney General's office. So I would be calling on the government at today's meeting in wherever it is, Celbridge, get the Attorney General up off their backsides and get them to do something useful.
Okay. Michael O'Leary, Chief Executive of Ryanair.
I wish you and everybody a very happy summer. I hope all goes well and everybody flies Ryanair.
Thank you indeed. Michael O'Leary there.